Okay, Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we're back in session for Council Bill 23-0381, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District and Chair of the committee. I am joined to my immediate left by Councilman Chris Burnett, 8th District member of the committee. We are here for Baltimore Convention Center. Mac, please take it away. Councilman Burnett, if you could please chair.
There we go. I think you still may need to turn it on. It should be red. Yeah, the mic should be, see how mine is like turn red? Yeah, yours may be.
Microphone check. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Councilman Burnett. My name is Matt Campbell, and I'm the Executive Director for the Baltimore Convention Center. I'm pleased to present to you our FY24 budget and solicit any feedback or questions you may have. Our mission is to drive economic impact for the city and the state, largely through sales and hotel taxes, but also by ensuring hospitality jobs are created and sustained through the spending of our patrons and their families. The Convention Center is a direct operating expense for the city's budget, but as you know, our deficit, which fluctuates annually, is offset 2/3 by the state. This leaves only a fraction of our costs obligated to the city's general fund. In FY22, the city share was $4.3 million, anticipated FY23 deficit, city contribution to be around $6 million, and in FY24, we're budgeting for a total deficit of $14.1 million, impacting the city's budget by only $4.7 million. I'm incredibly proud of my staff and the collaboration that we have with Visit Baltimore. Operating a building which is still running on 1979 infrastructure that historically provides exemplary experiences for approximately 500,000 people a year is no small feat. Selling a building that doesn't have many of the modern amenities that convention planners expect makes booking the over 20 citywide conventions, resulting in over 250,000 total room nights, downright Herculean. You'll notice that our deficit has grown over the last few years, and I wanted to elaborate on 3 major reasons for this. 1, many large one-time purchases have been hitting our operating budget. Items like new chairs for our patrons, replacement carpet, new staging equipment, and upgrading our utility monitoring are just some examples. In most cases, these items are well past their useful life expectancy and are due for replacement. These are items that last decades, thus they will be built back out of our budget in subsequent years. Secondly, the booking window for large conventions was drastically altered because of COVID. Many commitments to other cities in 2020 through 2022 delayed available years for Baltimore and other cities to bid on business. To use a football analogy, there were less free agents for us to go out and sign. The citywides that were on the market often chose cities that bought their business, many of which used ARPA funding to secure them. We suspect that with the expiration of ARPA allocations nationwide, along with the distance from the heart of the pandemic, we should see a normal competitive market for bids starting in FY27, which we are already actively bidding on. Lastly, as been mentioned over the years by my predecessor, Peggy Didakis, the building's age has had a significant impact on being the attractive choice when compared to other modern facilities. We are having to discount our rent considerably to keep hotel usage stable, and still, many other pieces of business are just choosing other, newer destinations and buildings. Add the impact of COVID and its impact on the downtown restaurant and attraction footprint, this makes for an overall uphill battle when selling Baltimore. That said, there are plenty of things to be excited and hopeful about. The recent infusion of surplus funding that we received earlier this year is going towards emergency rebuilds of all of our oldest and most troubled elevators. This is probably our #1 complaint with clients, and quite frankly, has become a national reputation amongst other planners that we can now remedy. The state supplemental funding of $25.7 million we received will begin to tackle a deferred maintenance backlog of over $200 million. This funding doesn't hit our capital funds, being completely managed by the Maryland Stadium Authority. A portion of this funding will also enable the due diligence on a program for the modernization of the facility, and that is a positive story to tell in and of itself. The statistic that I tend to repeat most, which gives us hope for the future, is that there is $6.5 billion worth of investment happening within a 1-mile radius of McKeldin Plaza between 2018 and 2028. Those investment dollars return employees and add new residents to downtown, open facilities to shop and eat in, and add entertainment enhancements for visitors to enjoy. This promise is something that validates Baltimore's advertised renaissance and will help close citywide business in future years. In the meantime, we are taking an even more proactive approach to ensuring any open dates are actively being advertised to local and national promoters by our internal sales team to help drive regional drive-in events. An example of such is a 50-day residency for a fully immersive attraction open to the public for the summer of '24, with the hopes of making it and others like it into multi-year deals. FY24 is looking to continue our journey back to pre-pandemic activity with over 105 events expected, and this is just shy of our FY19 activity of 114. During my first 6 months in this post, I have been working diligently to ensure that our reputation as a convention center that can fulfill our contractual obligations is met. I am personally having conversations with everyone from 40-year repeat exhibitors to associations who have chosen to stop sourcing Baltimore entirely. We need to be a center that adds value to the meeting and convention footprint and be an ever-evolving resource to the citizens of Baltimore. That involves soliciting feedback, compiling and listening to the story data tells us, and advocating to stakeholders, including this council, for the resources we need to help positively impact Baltimore. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District member of the committee, and Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District. Mac, just want to thank you and your team. Great to have you with us today for all the excellent work. I know you guys have been working as creatively as humanly possible to deal with significant deferred maintenance issues at the site. I want to specifically thank the team for getting Sharp Street reopened. I cannot tell you how grateful I am, as well as my predecessor, Bill Cole, for that. Also want to thank you specifically, Mac, and your Director of Security for immediately responding when we had the steam line explosion a couple weeks ago now. So appreciate the great customer and constituent service. Convention Center, located in the 11th District in the Central Business District, has always been an incredible community partner. I know you have very, very large shoes to fill with Peggy's recent retirement after 49 years with the institution, but I am very confident that the Convention Center is in very good hands under your leadership, Mac. Thank you. I'm just going to go down the line. Councilman Stokes. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for all you're doing. Obviously, the Convention Center plays an important role in our city. Obviously, played a huge role during the pandemic as well. So that was a big deal, and I know you were a part of that. I just had a question about you talked about a lot of the capital needs of the Convention Center, and I know you received pretty substantial money from the state for capital considerations as well. Can you talk a little bit about those, but also more kind of importantly, like how, I mean, capital is capital, right? You just have to do it. But, you know, how do you see being able to, whether it's put money in reserve or something like that for ongoing capital needs, so that we're not always coming out of the general fund for capital?
It's such a great question, Councilwoman. Good morning. So the first and obvious narrative that continues throughout these hearings is that we're a part of the city's 10-year plan. We're going to make sure that the convention center's investment is a focal point of that. You're absolutely right. We can't wait to be reactive. We have to be building a solid reserve to address what we know will happen. You know, the older a building gets, the more maintenance issues come up, and they become increasingly more critical. The challenge for the convention center is that we get $400,000 a year in capital money. That takes several years to accrue anything of a materiality to help push forward the real projects that we face. So trying to find ways to collaborate with both the state, the city, to address those issues are front of mind in my new post here. It's been pretty much front of mind since I joined in January. We were incredibly fortunate that in the governor's supplemental, the Maryland Stadium Authority got $25.7 million for deferred maintenance. But as I mentioned in my statement, I mean, we're close to $250 million worth of deferred maintenance. So while that is a tremendous amount of money, we are so grateful to have it in a building our size. Unfortunately, it's almost a drop in the bucket. It will help us. It will help us span the gap until we know what a modernization will really look like, what parts of the building that will affect, because the last thing we want to do is dump really good money into parts of the building that may be renovated, modernized in the near future. So things like fire life safety, new roof, things of that nature will be first and foremost with this money to make sure that we're spending it in a very reasonable and responsible way.
We just gotta, this is a theme for the hearings the last few days is, we just gotta get more money.
Yeah.
And I know that the state gave you some more capital, which is good, and obviously you're taking care of the more emergent issues with that. But there's gotta be a way to figure out, and I know you already, the city borrows on your behalf, so there has to be, something there. So I appreciate that. Obviously, we're all struggling with that. The second question I had was going back to conversations you and I have already had. I'm really clear that while it's important to have a convention center and a space, that visitors can't come to the convention center and then go back to home. Mm-hmm. They have to come to the convention center, and that it's much more of a gateway to the rest of our great city. And you can use that slogan, by the way, if you want. So tell me a little bit more about your plans to kind of make that happen, whether it's, I don't know what we can do other than just try to emphasize to people that the rest of the city is really a great place. Unfortunately, we do have some people who like to disparage our city, and so people want to stay in one place, but that's just not the reality. It's just not. So we want to make sure that, again, the convention center is much more of a gateway and not necessarily just a place for people to hang out.
Thank you.
And stay away. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things that has been a through line since I've come back is to try to figure out how to be more relevant to not only the meeting and convention footprint that our mission is to help drive economic impact for, but also to be more relevant to the citizens of Baltimore in meaningful ways. And that happens a couple of different ways, right? Obviously, having local events for folks to come to is the easy part, right? Things like the car show and the tattoo convention and Be More Healthy Expo, things of those natures, right? That's why we're working on trying to find new programmatic material for inside our roof to bring folks down and say, oh, the convention center is for me. That's really, really important from our equity lens, from a relevancy lens. The other piece is more challenging, and you and I have talked about it. And so what I'm working on in collaboration with Visit Baltimore is meaningful installations throughout our building that really drive folks to the other parts of the city in addition to what's great in downtown. You're right. We often say kind of nonchalantly that, very easily someone could come to a hotel, come to the convention under a covered connected bridge and leave. While leaving money in our city, they never see our city. And so if we can be a lens, a gateway, and a subtle push into the neighborhoods, we'd be very, very happy to serve in that role. So we're working diligently with Visit Baltimore to roll up some refreshes of our public spaces, accentuating neighborhoods and districts of all corners of the city. And the other thing I'm working with the mayor's office on is to really re-engage public art in our facility to make sure that not only is there a sufficient amount of art, some destinations across the country actually have the largest collection of public art in their state under their convention footprint. I'd love to be one of those, and to make sure that that is done by city artists of all kinds of diverse backgrounds that can really show like, hey, we've got wonderfully creative people. Here's where their studio is. Here's where their other murals or sculptures are, and help them get there. You're absolutely right. We are a gateway into the greater city footprint. So I wear two hats. You're absolutely right.
I love that idea of the artwork in the convention center, because when you go in, it's kind of bland right now. So it'd be nice to actually have just the bright, vibrant, art that we have in our city, and that might be a great way to get people out. So I think that's a great idea. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad you're thinking through all of these things, and let me know when you have your first art opening.
You'll be the first invite, I promise.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just second what my colleagues said. I don't have any real questions for you all. I think you're doing the best you can with what you have. And, given the hurdles of, an aging facility, I went to a ball game the other day, and it was still nice to see folks coming and going from the convention center. I have a reminder that sometimes when you're in this work, it feels like, the rest of the world sees this as a place to not come, but then when you see large groups of people walking down Pratt Street, buying food and asking for directions, it's a reminder that, hey, this is still a destination, even if it's one that we can do a whole lot more to draw a whole lot more people into. So I think you all are vital to that. And I would say just, hold the line. Obviously there's, a revamp of Harbor Place coming, and a lot of focus on improving our neighborhoods and just the image of our city. And so I just want to thank you all for doing what you do every day to make this a destination and a place that people can have a great experience when they do come to. So thank you.
Councilman, thank you. If I could just take a minute to elaborate on that. You're absolutely right. This past weekend and as well as opening day, when we had activity, the arena had activity, the ballpark had activity. This past weekend, we had close to 25,000 folks from the Islamic Circle of North America engaging with a homestand from the Orioles, plus Blink-182 at the arena. Those weekends show the promise and the still innate ability for success for Baltimore to bring people together. And when you layer public safety on top of that, which is the glaring optic concern, you'll see when there's vibrancy, crime goes down, right? Drastically. And so one of the big things that I feel that we can help from a holistic standpoint is if we can help create that vibrancy. It's not we have to fix public safety before we get the convention center. We need the revitalized, modernized convention center to help create that vibrancy, to help drive down crime. And I think we're I'm going to be bullish on it. I'm going to promise to try not to be too obnoxious, but the convention center has done its tour of duty for 40 plus years without significant renovation, other than the one in '96. Other competitors that have been the same size, built the same time we are, have had 5 since then. And to your earlier point, Councilman Ramos, I think it's moving forward, we're going to take it at smaller chunks versus just holding the line and then swinging for the fences with a really big number, because obviously that's much harder to budget, and I want to keep BBMR on my good side. But I do feel that we play a really holistic role in this propping the city narrative up and moving it in a new direction, back to where we know it should be, because the bones of the city are fantastic. So if we can just get the noise out of the way and focus on the signal, we'll be in a good place.
And I'll say, on the art front, the 2 people talking in the window continues to still throw me off, that statue. Yeah. It threw me off as a kid, and then I was walking by the other day, I still looked over like, ooh, okay. Like, it gets
if
me
it
every
wasn't
time.
for their bell bottoms, you wouldn't know they weren't real.
So I'm hopeful that if you do a refresh, keep them there, because it continues to be entertaining every time I walk by. But thank you.
Absolutely.
Colleagues, any other questions? Mac, team, thank you all very much. We're now in recess till 10:30 a.m. sharp for Parking Authority of Baltimore City.
Thank you.